In a wide open American League, which team is going to step up? Could it be Minnesota? Let's talk to Brandon Warne and find out.
You are Locked On MLB Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, Locked On Twins Crossover. This is a podcast we talk about either all of Major League Baseball or breaking down the ins and outs and reconstruction of your 1991 World Series champion Minnesota Twins. I'm Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. And joining me today is the host of Locked On Twins and friend of the podcast. It's Brandon Warne. Good to see you, Brandon.
Nice to be back. Always good to be in your presence.
Oh, thank you so much. Absolutely. Well, hey, follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, whatever they're calling it these days, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully, at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. The best way to get a hold of us is to just put the messages down in the YouTube. Brandon, where can they follow your show?
Well, I always say I wouldn't, but at Locked On Twins, or you can follow me at Brandon_Warren. But yeah, find us on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, and come have some fun with us. I think it's going to be a pretty fun 2025.
Yeah. And by the way, let's get on to the trivia question first. The answer to the trivia question. The trivia question asked in the last episode was Tommy John. His name came up a bunch of times because of the surgery. And as I've said before, how fortunate are we that it was Tommy John who did that and not Al Hrabosky or Win Remishwal, but Tommy John did it. Well, when the White Sox traded Tommy John to the Dodgers, and most people remember him with either the Dodgers or the Yankees, the White Sox got back a future Hall of Famer for Tommy John, and actually someone who went on to win the MVP that year. Do you know which future Hall of Famer they got for Tommy John? All right. Well, Big John 08865 knew it was Dick Allen.
Yay.
Dick Allen,
Love Dick
newly elected, and still drives me crazy. Posthumous. There's no reason he had to be put in posthumously. They had a chance to put him in while he was alive. Celebrate our heroes when they're alive, but at least he's in now where he should be. Right. And at the time, boy, oh boy, that looked like a steal for the Chicago White Sox that they traded away Tommy John and they got the American League MVP. We talked about a whole bunch of things in the last few days, and we will cover thoughts of public money on the Tampa Stadium. And a fellow by the name of Jesus of Apes has been piling up in my comment section. I just told him to tone it back a little bit because he was getting a little wild there. But let's just say he's very positive about the Milwaukee Brewers. Brandon, you are the voice, the mind of our 1991 World Series champions. I've been talking a lot the last bunch of days that the American League, I thought the American League was pretty wide open before some of these injuries started hitting the Yankees. You remove Luis Gil for at least half the season, Giancarlo Stanton for Lord knows how long, and Garrett Cole looks like he's going to, if he goes to Tommy John surgery, we're not going to see him until 2026. Even more than ever, the American League is wide open. The AL Central was already wide open. Tell me your thoughts of the AL as it is right now and where the Twins fit into that.
Well, what better way to put that into words than FanGraphs projected records right now has no team with more than 86 wins in the American League at large. The Dodgers, for instance, have 96, the Braves 93, the Phillies 87. I mean, this is about as wide open as you can get for an entire league, maybe ever. And especially now with how many teams make the playoffs. But with that said, I really, I was thinking about this the other day going into the car wash. I had some time to think to myself, and I said, the Twins have a chance to really put their mark on this season, and they could be, everyone could say they could be, with the exception of, one team you said, in the mix for best in the AL. And I think the Twins are right in the thick of that. They've got 5 starters who are all at least big league caliber, a bullpen that's going to be solid. They've got a couple extra starters in the minors. Their bench is solid. Their starting lineup is solid. It's just going to come down to staying healthy. And again, that's the biggest if you could imagine. But if they get 100 and let's say 30 plus games of Byron Buxton, Royce Lewis, and Carlos Correa, my money's on this team winning the division and being right in the thick of it for best team in the AL.
I've been saying something. I want to get your thought on this. This is a philosophy I've had for a while, and I can't believe this has any sort of profound quality to it. But the I think the team that is always putting their best, what is it, 26 players now in the roster? I'm so used growing up, it was always 24, but it's 26 players now.
Yep.
The best healthy 26 players in your organization have to always be on the major league roster. If you have a prospect and you're manipulating their service time or you're doing this, that, or the other thing, have always your best players on the roster. Uh, that's the team that's gonna have a chance to do well. There is no team in the American League. I mean, even before the injuries took place in New York, I don't think the Yankees were a 100-win team, especially once you remove the Jenga piece that was Juan Soto. We all saw what having that extra bat in the lineup meant for the success of the Yankees. The Yankees for the last bunch of years have terrible depth. They have terrible depth. If they've seen that any amount of injuries will just devastate the team, and we'll see if the 2023 season or the 2024 season was the fluke. But that being said, every other team, with the exception of the Chicago White Sox, has talent and gigantic flaws. And if there's ever going to be a year where there was a team that won the pennant, that at the end of the year you say, "Who saw that coming?"
Right.
It's going to be 2025. And when you look at, I mean, Cleveland won. I mean, 4 teams made the play. What is it? 3 teams made the playoffs out of the Central. I'm sorry, I almost
Yes. Yeah.
4 teams. 4 teams had winning records. The division as a whole had a losing record, but that's because Chicago lost at a rate that we'll probably never see again. You had 3 playoff teams there, all of them flawed. And if Minnesota had a better September, or Detroit didn't just have this went on an absolute rampage, you know, there, you would have had, Minnesota had a legit shot of making the playoffs last year. And you look at the squad that got off the schneid, finally advanced in the playoffs a couple of years ago, got that whole monkey off their back. They haven't won since blah de blah. Um, they have as good a chance as anybody right now. And it just, it will require health and luck, but they have the pieces there, I think, where health and luck, the law firm of health and luck could help them.
It's all the more reason why it's frustrating that they didn't spend much in the way of even just getting back to where that payroll was 2 years ago when they advanced in the playoffs and then cut 30. And they talked all season long about can't add payroll. And, they added a couple bit pieces. I mean, if Harrison Bader is your big move, I think he's a very nice player and he's going to fit a very specific role on this team. But if you wanted to make the claim that they could use one more starting pitcher or one more bat in the outfield, I'm not gonna argue with that too ferociously. But again, it could come down to if they stay healthy and win 85 games, that might be enough to win the division. To go back to that point that I started with, for instance, the AL East is 86, 85, 83, 83, 82, all positive run differential projections. It's astonishing how level the AL is, which I don't know if that's the goal, to level the playing field. Everyone talks about got to have a salary cap to level the playing field. It's pretty level right now
as it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, when we come back, we're going to break down what few moves. Ladies and gentlemen, where were you and what were you doing when the Twins signed Harrison Bader? And see if there may be any reinforcements coming up from the farm. Hey, get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. That's Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy to use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right the first time. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order, Brandon? Well, Supply House offers expert support and industry leading service, and you'll always talk to a real person. That's refreshing. I've been talking to lots of AI recently, and let me tell you something, it makes me go, AI. And for the trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already being taken advantage of Supply House, and now it's your turn. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's at supplyhouse.com. Sing that jingle with me. Supplyhouse.com. Talking Twins. Um, yeah, I mean, they acquired Harrison Bader. Again, one of the really sort of groundbreaking moments of the offseason when Harrison Bader signed on with the Twins. I I actually think he's a nice pickup. I think it's a positive move. I'm a big believer in, filling holes with major leaguers. They lost Carlos Santana, which is, it's weird. Their biggest gain is okay, and their biggest loss is, Carlos Santana is not like losing, Juan Soto here. Um,
Very low
but
wattage.
yeah, their losses were not gigantic, and their gains were not gigantic. They really could use some power on that team. They could really use a big slugger on that team. But give me your thoughts of, the season's going to begin in just a couple of weeks. What are your thoughts on the holes on the team, and if there's any how they can fill them?
Well, right now it's more about, like the old saying, if you have two of something, you have none. There's competition at a few different spots. Primarily second base is the one where it's unclear if it's going to be Brooks Lee, Edouard Julien, Willie Castro. And I think the early favorite right now is Brooks Lee, obviously a big time prospect, big time draft pick from Cal Poly a few years ago. And I think though, if it goes beyond that, they have a prospect who just coming off Tommy John surgery named Luke Keeschel, who has a really, really nice swing from the right side. Good plate coverage, good plate discipline. Really takes a nice plate appearance altogether. And I think I don't know if they're necessarily hoping, but I think what they'd like to see is, he's DHing right now. He may start playing out in the field a little bit here at the end of spring training. And then I would assume head to St. Paul to get his season started. And that's going to be a really strong roster too. But if he figures some things out and his arm is good enough to even just play second base, that might be the answer. And he's their number 3 prospect on Pipeline's top 30 for the Twins. Beyond that, most of their big league roster is young, and maybe, Emmanuel Rodriguez, if he can stay healthy, can work his way into the outfield. But at the same time, they've got Matt Wallner in right, who's still reasonably young and finding his footing, may provide that power you were kind of bringing up. And other than that, it's a lot of guys who've kind of come up to the big leagues, still don't really know what you're going to get out of them. Jose Miranda, Julian, those kinds of guys. That you need a few of them to step up, and the hope is that maybe 2 or 3 of them do. But it's hard because how do you give out enough playing time to see what a guy's capable of without taking playing time away from someone else who needs to show you that? So
Right.
I'm thinking it's kind of an unenviable position, but at the same time too, it's a talented enough roster that if they figure everything out that they should be right in the thick of it. And I think that's pretty much all you can ask for, given ownership's kind of self-imposed payroll mandates.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking a look at the top 100 prospects according to MLB.com right now, and I did this before you and I jumped on the phone here. They list Roki Sasaki as the number one prospect. I think that has to be a separate category. When you're
Yeah.
bringing in someone from an established professional league, I don't think that's the same as someone who you drafted out of high school and brought up. I do I think that I even think there should be a separate Rookie of the Year award. It should be like
Newcomer of the year.
It should be called the Ichiro Award, the
Ichiro
best player
newcomer.
from
Yep.
best comer from another professional league. If someone came in from Japan, if someone came in from the Cuban national team, someone from like who's already played at that high level, I think that's different than
Well, or like a
you know
guy like Eric Fetty who comes back.
right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a different scenario. He's listed
Right.
at number one. Roman Anthony, who's one of the whole, the trifecta of massive prospects coming through Boston, is number two. Walker Jenkins is number three. And so the good news is, for all of the John the Baptists in Minnesota just preparing the way, you've got if I get in trouble for that, I apologize.
Oh, good.
But you've got one of the best left-handed power hitters in all of minor league baseball. Plus power, left-handed swing, seems to have a baseball intellect off the charts, and is one of the best offensive prospects in all of baseball. The problem is he's not going to be on the major league roster for a couple of years. I mean, unless he's has an OPS of 4,000 in Wichita. That's their Double A team, right?
Yep.
I've lost track of some. I know St.
They-
Paul is now
They've changed a lot, actually. It was Chattanooga, Pensacola, and Wichita, and before that it was, I think, New Britain. So it's okay.
I know it was New Britain because
Yes.
I was living in New York, and a native of Connecticut would go. That is me. I would go to minor league games, and they were the Hardware City Rock Cats for a while. And I remember I remember New Britain was a Minnesota Twins farm team. That's why there used to be, when I used to read Baseball America cover to cover, I knew where all the affiliates were. And then I became a father with a job and things like that. And I started to lose track of where, where every team was. But,
Right there with you.
but Jenkins will eventually, if everything, blossoms correctly, if you're talking about a lack of power, you're going to have some left-handed power coming up soon. Do you think there's a possibility? And I've been reading up on him a little bit. I mean, I knew who he was. I've been reading up on him a little bit before, you and I got on the call here. I know that the power on this team is one of its biggest flaws. If he is being just the Tasmanian devil in Wichita, then they bring him up to St. Paul, and he starts kicking the snot out of everyone there. Do you bringing up my idea of you always play the best 26 players on your major league roster? If Jenkins makes mincemeat out of Wichita and St. Paul, do you think Minnesota brings them up saying, you know what, we have a chance to win a pennant here this year. Let's go.
100%. Yes. And I think the only thing that's going to get in his way, and stop me if you've heard this one, is injuries. He's dealing with a little ding up right now. It's Twins prospects. We had Keith Law on Locked On Twins, and I just kind of point blank asked him, like, are the Twins more unlucky than other teams, or do they have a higher injury rate? And he said, yeah, it just seems like it right at this moment, or in this last little bit, they've just been more prone to it. And so, yes, if healthy, this is a rocket ship scenario where, I mean, we've seen guys jump from Double A quite frequently in the Twins organization. Kirby Puckett back in the early mid 80s, I guess. But Joe Mauer more or less skipped Triple A. Byron Buxton and Miguel Sano both more or less did. They ended up going back, which is another story altogether. But yeah, the Twins historically are not afraid to even jump some of the best prospects from Double A. Now, with that said, I do think that he would get at least a stopover in St. Paul. And I think you're looking at a guy who could hit 25 homers and 40 doubles, play good defense. I mean, the pie in the sky 100th percentile comp that we have heard for him is Larry Walker, who, I mean, growing up in the area, in the era that he played,
that's not bad.
Incredible baseball player. One of the one of the best. I mean, everybody talks about Colorado. Let me tell you, go back and look at that last year in Montreal.
Oh, he was great as an expo.
He was going to be
He
a
was
beast
absolutely
if you put him on
terrific.
the
Yeah.
moon. Yeah. So it's a very, very possible thing. And also, too, not an insane number of roadblocks to get him up here, because even if your corner outfielders, Wallner and Larnick, are hitting, one of those guys can DH. It would be Larnick. Wallner's got the arm for right field, and he's, I think, a little more mobile than Larnick. But yeah, an outfield of Jenkins, Buxton, Wallner, or some, Manuel Rodriguez in there somewhere as well is very, very possible. A lot of people are saying September. I think around mid-season is possible if things go well. And maybe the joke's on me for, after watching the Twins this is my 33rd year. If I'm expecting things to go well, the joke's probably on me.
What team was he on? Did he play in? Was he in the Florida League last year? Where was he last?
He jumped a little bit. So they have him listed at AA on the pipeline, kind of like they project where they're going to go. And I'm going to pull it up because I don't want to give.
Oh, I see. They actually did play a handful of games in AA last year, because he was in
6 in
Fort
Wichita.
Myers for most of the year. And
he basically
Cedar
split it right
Rapids.
down the middle, Cedar Rapids and Fort Myers.
Yeah.
And for me,
Okay.
I still struggle to remember that they flip-flopped. Fort Myers used to be the high A, and Cedar Rapids was the low A. And
the Florida League was always like, that was the next step before. Oh, man, I should renew my subscription to Baseball
there
America.
You go. Well, and that's
really,
that's their home base is Fort Myers, where everything takes place organizationally.
All right. Well, look, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the other thing that's looming over the Twins right now, which is potential new ownership and what that could possibly mean. Is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, even who's cutting down the neck. Now, who am I going to keep an eye on right now? The University of Montana. That's right.
Ooh.
Why? For the very scientific reason that when I was in the hospital this week, there was a University of Montana versus Eastern Washington game on, and I enjoyed watching them. There you go. Remember, I was on painkillers at the time in the hospital, but do you know what? I may be going to FanDuel and putting some dough on the University of Montana, and you could stay in the action. Tournament games are happening almost every day. There's always something exciting to bet on, and the FanDuel app is simple and easy to use. And when I win, I get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. That's FanDuel. Let's get in on that March Madness. I have a master's degree from Washington State, and I just got another master's degree from Cal State Fullerton. And to the best of my knowledge, neither of them are in the tournament.
I wondered about the jacket, but yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, this May, I am going to be at the Cal State Fullerton graduation ceremony where I'm earning my master's degree in special education, and that's right next to the stadium, the baseball stadium, where they've won several national championships there. Tim Wallach was a big, huge star at Cal State. Cal State was a big college baseball school, which is the reason why when I needed to get a master's degree in special education, I said, I want one connected to a good baseball school.
There you
go. By the way, there's some good players came out of Washington State too. Go Cougs. Ron Say came out of there. The great John Olerud was a two-way player there. He was they were thinking of making him, he would have been Ohtani before Ohtani, that he was a great pitcher as well as a great hitter.
Can you imagine him pitching with a helmet on though?
It would have been great. It would have been great. In fact, it was around the same time that you had Jim Abbott pitching. You had a pitcher with no, right hand. So how strange would a helmet be?
Yep, that's true.
And do you remember how many years he spent in the minor leagues before coming to the
John Olerud?
John Olerud. 0. Go Cougs.
Not a one.
Not a one. I'm showing my college. I got my bachelor's degree from New York University, which had neither a baseball nor football team.
I went to Northwestern, and when people assume it's the Chicago one, I just say,
There you go.
Actually, St.
There you
Paul,
go.
Minnesota.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I'll tell you what does matter: the fact that, um, hanging over the Twins right now is the potential of new ownership, which could be good news or could be bad news. I don't know. I have a theory of what the Twins should be in baseball, and I'll get to that at the end. But Brandon, what are you hearing about the potential of a new ownership, and what does that mean?
I would like to correct your assessment. It could be good news or it could be great news. The bar
Okay.
is so low for Twins ownership going back pretty much ever. The Polad family bought it from a guy who was so racist they ran him out of town. They took down his statue. And this team has won in spite of the Polads in a lot of ways for a lot of seasons. I mean, when they were good in the Metrodome, they didn't spend any money. And that churn of young players meant they were always hungry. They always had young guys who were going to play hard and try to get that next step. What's going to happen sooner rather than later, and the Ishbia brother dropping out was a setback, is it's going to just come out just kind of out of nowhere because the Twins as an organization leak nothing. Free agency, you didn't see them coming in and swooping in on Carlos Correa the first time and maybe not even the second time. They are tight-lipped. So I think what's going to happen is a billionaire and some cronies, maybe Joe Mauer on the far end of the group, will swing through and buy the team. And even if they just so much as trade for something at the deadline that's semi-exciting, that's going to be enough for Twins fans to be head over heels. The bar is so low here. And yes, I know Twins have a fairly new stadium. It's one of the most beautiful ones in the league. They have some really great players, but everyone just feels kind of duped by ownership year after year after year. So it could be a good thing or it could be a great thing.
Tell you something. There are two teams in the American League that I don't think are taking advantage of their unique situation geographically. I think the Mariners are one of them. I think the Twins are another. It always upsets me when I hear people talk about Minnesota being a small market. Minnesota is not a small market. Minneapolis is not a podunk town.
Mm-mm.
Minneapolis is a large metropolitan area with a lot of corporate money and a lot of people. It is a huge region. And but the region also should go further out. It should penetrate the Dakotas. It should penetrate the areas around, North Dakota, South Dakota, all
Well, it
throughout
does.
Minnesota.
It does. It still has room to go, though.
And it should be the way that the Red Sox are to New England, that
Mm-hmm.
whole region, what the Braves are to the South, that whole area. Now, the Braves were helped by TBS, but when you go around the South, the Braves have a huge fan base and a very strong fan base. If you go to Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, you go to all those areas, and even a lot of northern Florida. That's Braves country. They're all wearing Braves hats. I used to go down there. Granted, when I would be going down south a lot as a performer it was in the 90s when the Braves were excellent. But guess what? They're excellent again.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go to Maine, you go to Vermont, you go to Rhode Island, it's all Red Sox. I think the Mariners should be that for all of the Northwest, and I think basically anywhere that Marge Gunderson was driving through in Fargo should be all Minnesota Twins territory, and I believe it is. I believe if you're gonna ask those people what team are you following, they're gonna say the Twins. But the Twins have to take advantage of that. They have to take advantage that they play in a large metropolitan area and they have a huge regional following that should make them act. Maybe not like the Dodgers or the Mets, okay? Those are the two outliers in baseball right now. Or if you want to still throw the Yankees in there, fine, but they're adhering to the luxury tax too.
Mm-hmm.
But the Twins they should spend like not a huge market team, but a good size market team.
The
And I
Cardinals
think that
10 years
if they
ago.
do that and they take advantage of that region, I think, and a new ownership mentality, I think the Twins could go into the rest of the 2020s and into the 2030s as a very competitive team.
I think they should be the Cardinals of 10 years ago, where it was,
Exactly.
and
That's a great comparison. That is a
not only
great
that, but
comparison.
fans live and die with the Cardinals. If you can get that loyal of a fan base, that big of an geographic area cornered, and then I always felt like the Cardinals were like develop, develop, develop. But when a player became available that you really wanted, you go get him. Like Larry Walker finished his career there and was still a productive
Jim
player.
Edmonds.
Scott Rowland, when there's a player that can put you over, like Carlos Correa fits that bill. Now,
Right.
the Cardinals now they scarcely resemble that. And in fact, the Twins should call them up and get Eric Fetty right now. But if you can be like all the low end teams look to be the Rays, all the mid tier teams should look to be the Cardinals, all the high tier teams should look to be the Dodgers. The Dodgers, it's no coincidence spend all that money and have an insane farm system. If you fit into your tier, there's definitely teams to imitate where you don't have to start spending more money than you would expect.
Right. Exactly. Well, looks like then why are we fighting?
And those fans are the ones that are mad that Target Field doesn't have a roof, which is fair, but a Target Field with a roof would be a disaster.
Well, look at the few years ago, both the Twins and the Rockies made the playoffs at the same time. And I think I went to church every day to light a candle saying, "Dear Lord, please have the Twins play the Rockies in the World
That'd be
Series
great.
because I want outdoors Minneapolis, outdoors Denver, and all the casts of the new shows in Fox where they have to cut to. Say, here, the cast of the New Girl, shivering in the 20-degree weather. That's what I want.
Yep.
In absolutely, it looks like Hoth, and that's where they're playing. Tauntaun runs out the first pitch.
Yes.
But there you go. Keeping my references really up to date. Well, Brandon, let's go do the trivia question here. When you combine the Senators Twins franchise, I believe all the Senators records should be with the Nationals. I think they won them. They played all of them in Washington. There should be the most wins in Washington history, home runs in Washington history. I think that's where it should be. I digress. The all-time home run king of the franchise is Harmon Killebrew. But how many of those home runs did he hit only in Minnesota? That's the trivia question. And the answer will be posted tomorrow. Post your answers down here on the YouTube, and we will tell which one of you got it right. Brandon, tell people where they can listen to your show, and I don't care what you say, I think they should.
Well, check us out, YouTube. I always post our chartable link, but anywhere you get your podcasts, find Locked On Twins, and co-host Dave Brown is also just tremendous. Added him in the last year, and it's really made the show a much better option.
Well, and you can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days, and on the Instagrams. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, but the best way to get a hold of me is right here on the YouTubes. Talking about the Twins and how they should take advantage of this absolutely wide open American League. This has been a Locked On MLB, Locked On Twins crossover. He's Brandon Warne. My name is Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.